Kay, are you HKW?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. All right, so we are going to get started. Everybody should be able to see my screen. Chris Wenchie, who, if you look in the chat, is under Christy D. Wenchie. She is going to be helping me monitor the chat. There are some, if you need to hear audio or those kinds of things, Chris has instructions over on the side. I am going to play the Vanna White and click through the PowerPoints, and Kay and I together will do this information session. So welcome. It looks like we currently have 73 participants, Kay.
Perfect.
So everybody is muted at the end. We're going to unmute people. If you have some questions, you can put them into the group chat and we can answer them as we go. And then we'll have an opportunity at the end to click on the questions and make sure we're getting everybody answered. So this is an informational session on the OAG reimbursement for sexual assault exams. And so we're going to go through introductions. I'm Lori Charles. I'm a clinical assistant professor here at Texas A&M, and we have been very lucky to collaborate with the Attorney General's office on several things regarding sexual assault healthcare. Ms. Kay?
Yes, hi, and I'm Kay Woodard-Hotes, and I am the manager of the Sexual Assault Prevention Crisis Services Program here at the Attorney General's office. The OAG, the SANE certification falls under our program, also the primary prevention piece, and then also assisting with the House Bill 616 implementation.
Thank you. All right, so we have 80 participants on now. So we wanted to talk about the changes to the sexual assault exam process. So Ms. Kay, I'll let you go. Have fun.
Okay, perfect.
To cover this.
Okay, so September 1st, well, this weekend, there were not two major developments. The evidence collection protocol was released. This has been a major effort by Texas A&M and across the state of Texas, getting over 500 stakeholders, various experts together to work on updating the very outdated Texas evidence collection protocol. So that is available, as you can see on the screen, at the Texas A&M site. It will be a new driving force for how exams are conducted. Of course, there have been questions already on, is this absolutely how we have to do things? It is the best practice, evidentiary-based best practices. So obviously, if there is something in your area that your crime lab needs, it's slightly different, or your prosecutor needs, or your investigator, then you would need to make sure you follow whatever y'all have been doing with that. Is that true, Lori?
Yes. And
okay.
So if we follow this link here, it will take us to, oops, let me click out of that. Here is our Center of Excellence in Forensic Nursing website. If you come here to resources, you will find the information on the Texas Evidence Collection Protocol. The whole protocol is at the top. There are the flow sheets for prepubertal children and adult and adolescents. And there's the sexual assault evidence collection kit forms. Those are the updated forms, and then all the body diagrams. If you were to scroll down here, there's a law enforcement request for sexual assault exam form is also there, and it's on the Attorney General's office website. And so if you go to the Attorney General's office website, crime victims forms, right here under sexual assault exam reimbursement forms, here is that law enforcement form. So you can find it in two different places. And so hopefully it's easily accessible for everyone. And so we will go back to the evidence collection protocol. We've gotten some questions on that. You do not have to use the forms that are in the Texas evidence collection protocol. If your forms are more inclusive, you want to use the forms that you're currently using, please continue using them. If you need to have different forms than the ones that were in the old protocol, here they are. They're here for everybody to use. All right, Ms. Kay.
Perfect. Now we'll get to the one that probably everybody's really excited about. So House Bill 616 changed the way Texas processes reimbursements for sexual assault exams. So it made changes to Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, both Articles 5606 for reported sexual assaults and Article 56065 for non-reported. So this is regarding the reimbursement of the forensic cost of the sexual assault exams that were conducted after August 31st. So the same website that Lori took you to a second ago will have the policies, the new guidelines, and again, the sexual assault form for exams conducted both before 9/1 and after 9/1. The big change, so anything before 9/1, so all exams 831 or earlier, will still go under the old process. So that means law enforcement is still responsible for the forensic cost of exams prior to 9/1. Beginning 9/1, so I think we can go to the next page now. Perfect. So beginning 9/1, let's go to the next one, sorry. Okay, so all applications for reimbursement of forensic cost for 9/1 and later will now be done online by the medical provider. So if it is a dual process where you have a hospital or facility that bills for part of it and there's a contracted SANE, then both of those medical providers would be able to bill into our online system all up to the maximum reimbursable amount, which is $1,000. So in the past, all the bills had to be submitted together. In this case, it will not. Both providers would need to set up an online access system and be able to provide their billing online. The system is being upgraded currently to provide an online portal feature. Hopefully by early October, or if it's done earlier, we will send out notices as well. But that will require registering as a medical provider online on our website, and then you would be able to get access. So it would be a typing up for every single claim you have for each exam. You will enter all the patient information, be able to upload your bill, and then also upload the law enforcement exam request form. There will be no way to mail copies or hard copy applications will be accepted. Everything will be done online for all exams after 9/1. And for after 9/1, we will no longer be able to pay law enforcement forensic cost of exams. So for exams conducted after 9/1. The statute does not allow us to give a reimbursement to law enforcement. So it's very important that the bills come from the medical providers for any exam conducted 9/1 or later. So any questions on that so far? Okay, I think we can go to the next one, Laura. So the big change in this, so again, we will provide more detailed instructions on the online system. Again, it's not up yet. So once it is up, then we will send out another notice to everyone to let you know to register and to get on that. The reporting process is very important. So House Bill 616 requires law enforcement to document in a manner required by the OAG their request or denials of sexual assault exams for all reported sexual assaults. So that is what that PDF fillable form is for. Law enforcement would, and this can kind of happen organically, but law enforcement fills out this form with a victim/patient information and signs and lets them know exactly what the reason for either requesting it or if they are denying it. A copy will need to stay with law enforcement, be provided to the victim, and then also be given to the medical provider. This does not necessarily mean that when the report is done, that it has to be handed to everybody right then. I know there are 100 different ways that people or that medical providers are providing reports to law enforcement. It could be done, sometimes it's done verbally if law enforcement is meeting with a victim off-site and says, may call the medical provider and say, I'm sending the patient over and I'm requesting this exam. You can follow up later with getting law enforcement to sign it, and then copies can be provided after the fact. So it is really up to each local area on how they're going to do that. Some of them will do it ahead of time. Sometimes the law enforcement is at the hospital with the victim. So if that's the case, then law enforcement can sign there. Copies can be made there. It's just very important that everybody gets a copy at some point. And we're again leaving that up to the locals, whatever best fits their needs. The law enforcement request it's on the website as Lori showed you. It's a fillable PDF, but you could also use it. Someone had asked if they could create it as an electronically signed one, where if they have the technology to do that in at their agency, then they could do that and create an electronic signature, so that way it can be emailed to everybody, printed, if that's the case. It just cannot be a changed form, if that makes any sense. You cannot change the text or anything at the top. It can be filled in, but electronically signed, but it cannot be modified. If it does need to be modified in like a visual capacity, you would have to get permission from the AG's office to do so. The law enforcement exam form is for all reported exams after September 1st. So that hopefully this weekend, all the medical providers had what they needed, and hopefully we've been spreading it around to everybody, but it's still going to be trickling out to get to all the police stations, sheriff's offices around the state. The form will need to be uploaded with any bill that comes in for reimbursement. So it's important both from a patient victim information standpoint, but also to show whether or not there was law enforcement involvement in exams so that the medical providers could be reimbursed. This will replace, for our purposes, the authorization form that was in the kit. Y'all I don't know that you will still need that or not in the kit. Lori, is it still in there? Can't remember.
Yes, it is still in the kit. When we did the town hall meetings, they asked that still stay in the kit, but I think as this rolls out and the system gets worked out, I think we can probably remove that one paper from the kit. So I have a couple questions for you, Ms. Kay.
Sure.
Kat again asked, when we start billing for exams conducted in September, since no mailed copies applications, when will we start billing? I think you kind of answered that at probably October, but I just wanted to make sure that we were
so please hold on to your bills. Once the website is up and running, it's being tested right now. Again, we had a 90-day turnaround for this, and we had to redo our computer system to allow for this billing process. So, and to be able to leave it up for the old bills and the new ones. So our best guess right now is early October. I will be sending updates as soon as we know for sure. So we will be bombarding you with emails and updates on the go live.
Thank you. So the next question from the police department, Brownsville PD asked, why does the victim need a copy, Kay?
The largest reason for this was when law enforcement said no. So if a law enforcement is not going to request a sexual assault exam after one is reported to them, this gives another opportunity for the victim to for the person reporting to know why an exam is not being reported. So the statute originally, listed that an exam shall be requested if the sexual assault is reported, and it used to be 96 hours, but now it's 120, and there was no other false reports. So this gives that capability if there is a need to say no, it's beyond 120 hours and there's no other appropriate reason, such as a child case, or if there's no consent given, If the patient doesn't consent to the exam, then obviously law enforcement can't request it, but it provides documentation of that. So that is why the victim gets a copy.
Thank you. And then the next one, Chris asks, does the law enforcement agency point of contact need to be the same person, or can it be the officer who takes the report?
It is up to y'all. So it needs to be whatever y'all need it to be. So, you know, in the past, the point of contact would have been the billing person probably, but we do need indication that you know, an investigator was requesting this. So really, it can be, the point of contact can be whatever entity or person they need, but it has to be signed by the law enforcement agent.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I think we're good on the questions, so we can go back to.
Okay, there was also one other, we had gotten a previous question whether or not law enforcement could add the pseudonym, because I do know that, you know, some of them will get a pseudonym form request as well. If that is necessary, the officer can put the pseudonym on that form to provide to the hospital. So it's not, if a victim is requesting a pseudonym to be used in all the documents for the, you know, government, then that is also possible.
Thank you. Okay, so Mary Salmon asked, does the date of the exam have to be the same as the date it is signed? I don't think so.
It does not, because as we said, it may occur after the fact. It may occur, you know, it could occur any way it is currently occurring. So I do believe that in some areas, law enforcement would come back by later and sign the authorization form after the fact, after the exam had been conducted, because there had been verbal authorization given. We're not trying to change any of that. But the caveat is, if you conduct an exam without speaking to law enforcement and there's no request given, then it's just a medical exam. There is no indication at that point, or it would have to be a non-reported sexual assault. Law enforcement has to be involved prior to conducting the exam for it to be reported.
Thank you. So Cindy asks, what do we do with the OAG form when law enforcement denies the exam? Does this form still need to be sent to the OAG even if an exam is not done?
I would recommend, and again, there's no statutory requirement that it be sent to us, but I am not sure what the statewide sexual assault task force will be requesting on this from a data perspective. So it might be a best practice to save those for the future, so we can indicate where this is occurring and the reasons why, for either training purposes or so that we can gain a better understanding when the exam is denied.
Thank you. So I want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. So Craig asked, previously the criminal code of procedure stated when an exam must be conducted, so within 120 hours, no false reports, etc. Does House Bill 616 change any of that? As far as I know, it only changes the 96 to 120, but the false reports and all that stuff, I don't think any of that wording was changed with House Bill 616.
It was not changed. Hold on. It just added the form in there, so that was the other piece.
Thanks. So
and hopefully all that will go online. I mean, you can still get to it by searching for House Bill 616 in Texas Legislature online, so you can see the actual language. You know, I know it hasn't been published in the.
So it's right here.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it'll
perfect.
be in the PowerPoint. If you click this Legiscan link, that'll take you right to the wording of 616 and the changes that it made to the CCP.
Perfect.
Okay, so let's go back. More questions. You have county assault was in, but not law enforcement agency. Can we put the law enforcement agency, not just the county? So how about we click into, here's the form. And so there's county and then there's law enforcement. So I'm not quite understanding the question from our Brosa. I'm sure I'm torturing that
Yeah,
last name. Sorry.
We do need to know where the sexual assault occurred because we do have to report county level data back to the ledge on where dollars are going. So if you, I mean, on this form, if it's law enforcement agency name, could put, if it's Travis County Sheriff, you would put Travis County Sheriff. If it's Arlington PD, so I don't know if, and we would know where the law enforcement agency was, but we do need the county for the crime.
Thanks. Okay, so Lofton put, for billing purposes, instead of, in the past we used a case number, should we use the patient's social security number? Or for a child, what should we use?
Oh, for the case number?
It says for billing purposes, in the past, we used a case number. Should we use a patient's social security number? Or for a child, what should we use? I'm not sure. Maybe
I think you will need to get with your billing department on that. We will, I don't think anybody bills using a social, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lori, but you would have like a invoice number or a patient ID or something like that that would go with your bill. So whatever your billing system is set up to do, because I don't think even in crime victims that we get bills from providers with a patient social on it.
Yeah, I just have a concern for identity theft issues. If we're putting social security numbers on there, I would think that probably would be something that we wouldn't want to do. But I'm also thinking from a hospital standpoint. So maybe people are working from community programs or something like that. So if they could clarify that in the question, that would be
right. So definitely not on the law enforcement form. It would be a law enforcement. The only thing on that would be the patient name and a case number. So on the law enforcement form, you would not want that.
Thanks. So Mary asked, will the OAG reimburse for exams requested by military investigators? That's a good question.
I do not believe so. I think all that is currently billed. It's not currently billed to us. It's
those are federal. Those are federal cases. So I do not believe that goes through state agencies.
Right. Now, if a state agency is working with the military and they're the ones investigating, just like it was in the past, you know, if Killeen PD was the one taking the case, not the military, then that would be different. Whatever agency was paying for it in the past would be the one to do it.
Thank you. So Brownsville PD is asking, should law enforcement fill out a form for a victim if the victim is sent to the hospital by a doctor or someone other than law enforcement? Who's responsible for that bill?
So on that question, if law enforcement is requesting that an exam be conducted, then they need to fill out that form. So if it's not for an exam and it's for medical, then the patient or their authorized individual would be responsible for it. But if that question meant that they are not sending the patient to the hospital for an exam, but for medical purposes, then it would be the patient's responsibility.
Patient's insurance or themselves.
Yeah. But only if it's not for a sexual assault exam.
Thank you.
And maybe I'm not understanding the question.
No, I think you are, and I think you're good. So like if CPS is sending a child in and law enforcement doesn't think that there's a reason to have the patient examined, but CPS wants the patient examined, they can be examined for medical purposes, and that billing would go to that patient's insurance. And
or if CPS is requesting it, then it may be under Medicaid or something else. So it would not be through us.
Right. I think we're good on that one. Why do we need law enforcement email on the form in case we have to contact law enforcement later on?
Yes, that is correct. That way, if there's any question on a name or did law enforcement really send this email, sign this form, it's just one more piece of, it can be the agency one. It's just
that was another question that just came up was who's that we have a lot of emails, whose email. So it can be the sex crimes email or something along those lines.
Right. Yes. Or because if there's a question on what if and this, again, to make sure that it's a valid form that came in and it wasn't somebody just signing one and going in and getting something. So it is just another tool to make sure for verification purposes.
So what if there's a federal prisoner? Again, I think that goes back to that's a federal case and it's not going to be reimbursed through state agencies. Am I correct?
And we did not reimburse for inmate exams prior to this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Does law enforcement still need to fill out a form for sexual assault when there's not going to be an exam and the victim knows this? Example, adult victim reports sexual assault that occurred several years ago when they were a child.
I guess they are not being, or they weren't examined in the past. There was no sane exam in the past.
Right.
So which means they're not consenting to an exam. So it wouldn't necessarily need to be filled out.
Or conversely, does it mean that law enforcement is saying, no, this happened a long time ago, we're not going to authorize an exam, and we're explaining that to the patient by filling out this form saying, no, we are not?
Well, it would be over 120 hours, and there was no other appropriate reason.
Yeah, so that would be a decline to request?
Yes.
Okay. So if a pediatrician sends the child for a sexual assault exam without contacting law enforcement, should a form be filled out by law enforcement handling the investigation?
Yes.
Yes. Once law enforcement's involved in a child case, they need to fill out the form whatever way they decide, but they need to fill out the form.
Yes. Otherwise, it is not. It wouldn't be part of the forensic process for us.
What about non-acute sexual assault exams done at the Child Advocacy Center?
So if it's done at the Child Advocacy Center, it's typically done after involvement from law enforcement, or am I mistaking that? When I spoke to the CAC of Texas, usually the exam is vetted prior to the exam taking place, and law enforcement is involved in that process.
Right. So if law enforcement is involved in the process, then they need to fill out the form one way or the other.
Right. Now, if it's just a medical exam and they are examining the patient for other things, but it's not a forensic evidence collection, then it wouldn't be. Again, law enforcement has to sign the form. So if law enforcement is not involved and it can't be a non-report of a child, then it's a medical exam.
So do we need to submit declined forms as well? I think Kate kind of spoke on this.
Yeah, we do. We will not need those. It will really be a tool for your area, either so you can get a better idea of why there's no's on cases. You know, the origination of this piece of the legislation began because representatives were hearing stories of exams being denied when it didn't seem to fit the statutory purpose. So the fix for that was to include this form so that you could get an idea of why law enforcement was saying no. And again, there are some statutory reasons to say no, but this would give, you know, an indicator if it was outside of that norm.
So
they do not need to be sent to the AG's office, but I would recommend keeping them as a best practice.
I agree too. So Rebecca and Mel both have similar questions regarding, you know, a physician in a private setting or facility or in the CAC. So those non-acute sexual assault exams. Law enforcement, if they're requesting an exam, they need to fill it out regardless if it's less than 120 or more than 120. And if we look at the bottom of the form, there are, you know, little caveats to that. And we're going to talk about some caveats coming up. Let me switch this. So have fun talking about the caveats.
So on non-reports, so again, when the patient comes in to the hospital and then reports to the medical provider that they have been sexually assaulted, and you go through the consenting process, and they do not want to report the sexual assault to law enforcement. They do want an exam, but they don't want to report to law enforcement. Then the same steps would apply as you would on the normal non-report cases. Medical provider would not have a form to fill out because the only time law enforcement's involved is on the back end when they come get the kids. But at this point, DPS will not be paying for the forensic part. It will be billed to our agency. So on the application, there'll be a statement that you know, at the time that you did the exam, it was either under 06 or 065, and under 065, it needs to be done by a SANE or a physician or a sexual assault examiner, that the patient did not report to the sexual assault to law enforcement, that it was within the time period, and then you will sign the application and it will be sent in. So the form is not needed for non-report.
So I think, Teresa, that answered your question, the non-reporting exam, because it's a non-report, this does not have to be filled out, this form. So Brownsville PD is asking about at-risk kids. If law enforcement's not involved in the potential investigation of a crime, if it's an at-risk kid that, say, CPS is sending in and law enforcement's not involved, then law enforcement does not need to fill out the form. Any other thing on that, Kay?
No, and because some of these will just be a medical assessment that doesn't, you know, they're not always sexual assault exams. Although you will do the head to toe, you will probably look for those things, but not every single one of them in those cases. I know all the CPS ones are not always taken by law enforcement, so they're not forensic exams at that point.
Thank you. Okay, so we're kind of jumping around back and forth a little bit. Teresa is asking about non-report again. Those bills don't go to you. Those bills go to DPS, correct?
No, so currently they would go to DPS, but in the new, after 9/1, they will not start coming to us. They just don't need the law enforcement request form because no law enforcement was involved in the beginning. So that's the difference. So now instead of billing DPS, you will now be submitting your form, your bill online.
So when they submit the bill online for the non-report, there'll be some section that they won't have to have that law enforcement form. Right.
Yes. So you will click if it's either a reported case, it'll walk you through, it'll be questions. Was this case reported? If you say no, then it'll take you down to the non-reporting option.
Everybody's asking great questions. Thank you so much. So I want to make sure, Brownsville PD, did we answer your question about the at-risk kids appropriately? No, okay. So I think we need to go into at-risk kids a little bit more. So say, one child comes in and we're concerned about sexual assault. So law enforcement authorizes an exam on the one kid. And then CPS says, you know what, we need to examine all the other kids because there's 4 kids in this home. So what do we do about billing for that? So the one child that law enforcement authorizes, we would use the form and that would go through OAG. All the other kids, unless there's something that stresses us out and we think, yes, they are sexually assaulted, we would do our normal medical billing that we do with every other patient that comes into the hospital. Does that answer the question a little bit better, Brownsville? I just want to give them a second to respond. So if law enforcement thinks the siblings are likely to be sexual assault, they can request those exams. Absolutely.
Yes.
How do we, Deborah asks, how do we bill for out-of-state assault presenting in Texas?
Okay, so we only reimburse for sexual assault exams conducted in Texas. So if, and it is a Texas law enforcement base. So if a out-of-state law enforcement agency is requesting that, they need to be the one to pay for it because it is from their jurisdiction and their state laws.
Thank you. I think that answers Deborah's question well. Joanne, have they changed the instructions on the DPS website for non-report exams to change where we
let's see.
to?
Non-reported, hold on. I'm pulling it up. Let's answer the, let's see. It looks like it was updated 9/3. So yes, they have updated their instruction on non-reported.
So the Texas Evidence Collection Protocol needs to be updated with that information also. Yay. I just want to make sure that's not a difficult update for billing for that. Okay. Is everybody clear on the non-reports? Still, the billing goes to the Attorney General's office, but there is a checkbox or something that says this is a non-report. So you do not have to have that law enforcement. Cynthia Garcia has a good question. If a patient is a repeat patient, how many exams may be reimbursed by the OAG?
So if it is a separate sexual assault each time, or in the rules say one exam, we will reimburse for one exam, but that typically meant a repeat exam of the same person, meaning had to come back for some other part of the same incident. So I don't know how many we have where it's a repeat individual with separate sexual assault. The rule is one.
Okay. So say the initial exam and the follow-up exam, they're only going to do one. But say completely different sexual assault, they'll do the first sexual assault and the second sexual assault.
I don't know how many times that happens.
Sadly, often. So Edward asked, do you have a suggestion regarding, for example, an 8-year-old outcries to sexual assault happened a month ago, but law enforcement declines because it is over 120, but the officer writes up report as an aggravated sexual assault?
So on that one, they really should be saying, they can say yes, because it is over 120 days and it would be appropriate to still do the exam because it was a child case. So that may be a training issue in the area because there is the ability to do an exam over 120 days under 5606.
For children. And so, Edward, we're going to take that one. I think that's a great topic of discussion for the sexual assault task force that is being in the process of being created right now. And so that we can have some very clear direction, because I think different agencies have different understandings of that. And so I think that's a great one to take to that task force and talk about from a child's point of view. You know, I personally think it's very important that every child has an exam regardless of when it happened. So Deborah asked, does billing a batch of invoices or individual invoices make it easier for the OAG?
It has to be individual because you'll be doing one for each patient or victim. So you will upload the bill for each individual case, just which is how they're done now.
Becky, I agree with you that you know, there are many aspects to doing a sexual assault exam of a child, even if it's more than 120 hours. And so that is why we want to take that to that task force. You can batch it weekly, or you can do it after every exam, but you have to submit each one separately.
Correct. And you will have 3 years to submit the bill. So I don't, recommend holding them for very long. But once you get the signed law enforcement form, each one has to be submitted separately, but you can hold them till the end of the week and do them all at once. You can do them however it is best for your practice or your hospital's billing.
Thank you. I agree on that. So let's keep going with the questions. If you guys have more questions or comments, what our plan is to do, we have Kay's information and then mine, is record this webinar. Any webinars we have on our A&M site have to be ADA compliant. So it will take a while to make sure that they're closed captioning and meet all ADA requirements. As soon as that is done, then we will post the webinar on our site. We are still waiting for closed captioning and everything on the prior webinar we did. And so as soon as all of those are available, we will send it out to everybody. It looks like we have 92 participants right now. Kelly said, how soon will payment be sent once forms are received?
Right now, we are able to if a bill comes in and it's itemized and it's, good to go. So everything comes in, hospital is billed, we can tell it was a sexual assault exam, it's itemized, you can tell the different things. I mean, we can turn around something in between 3 to 5 days. Now, if there are questions and we have to reach back out to the medical provider, it will take a little bit longer. But we have been able to reimburse law enforcement in, up to about 5 days.
Thank you. So Holland T wrote, I have 3 exams that are scheduled. They were scheduled before September 1st. Which type of billing will I need to do?
They have not been conducted, then they will be under the old one. I mean, I'm sorry, under the new one.
The new one. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So I can, at the very least, send out our PowerPoint slides if that works. So people can at least have the PowerPoint slides with the links and Kay's information and my information. So Carissa added, our hospital system creates invoices that request the acceptable payment. And these have directions for where to send the payment. Will there be a place to include this information? So they will bill the full bill with the understanding that they are only going to get reimbursed up to $1,000. Will there be a place to include that information?
Yeah, it would be cost contained down. So yes, it would only go to $1,000, but I think she's asking where to send the payment. When you sign up, you will have to set up a tax ID number that will tell you, that will kind of direct where stuff goes. So we currently have hospitals that are already in our system, which will indicate where the payment goes. So it's kind of tied to your tax ID number. Just like, billing for the university where it's a, certain code ties to a certain address.
Wonderful. Andrea, how long do you have to submit the bill to OAG? You have 3 years.
Yeah, from the date of the exam.
Yeah. So Becky O'Neill asked, what if the hospital and the nurse bill separately?
That is okay. Again, the total bill will only be, the total amount reimbursable is $1,000. So just like you currently do, where the contracted SANE or the outside SANE would bill for certain sets of procedures, and then potentially the hospital would, maybe for lab work and the facility charge. But again, the total they will both have to submit bills and upload a copy of the document, the law enforcement request, and then again, the maximum amount is $1,000. On the application, again, it's a clickable, online portal. You would click whether or not there were going to be other bills coming, like I'm the provider only, or I'm the facility, or there'll be lab fees. So it will, that way it would alert us that other bills are going to be coming in. So you do not have to submit them together.
Thank you. So Mara Beth asked, will this will allow me to set up the process at my hospital? Not quite sure what Mara Beth
Well,
is
again,
saying.
if the hospital needs to bill and a SANE, whatever medical provider needs to bill needs to set up an account. So if you are a contracted SANE, then you would need to have a tax ID and set it all up. And if you are a medical provider, then you would have yours set up as well, your tax ID.
Okay, so Natalie is asking, will they receive a 1099 from the OAG?
I am not sure on that. I do believe that we currently send out 1099. So if whoever asked that question can please email me at the address so that we can get back to her. But I do believe that everything that we pay to a provider generates a 1099 through the tax ID.
Thank you. So Natalie, if you'll email Kay at her email here, so you can get that information that you need. Any more questions from anybody else? Can a CAC bill for our cost and our contracted nurse cost?
We did speak with Lindsay at CAC, so it's however you were billing law enforcement. So I do believe if you were currently billing law enforcement, then you would just then bill us. But there are some areas where the hospital would be the one billing or the SANE would be. So it really just depends on how your billing process is set up. I would recommend that, Denise, that maybe you email us just to make sure we're telling you correctly on how your individual CAC is working. Because in some cases, the nurse might actually be on staff. So if that's the case, then you would just, bill everything through the CAC. If there's, a hospital involved and maybe the hospital is charging for facility, but y'all are doing the provider piece of it, then it would be 2 bills as well. So we just need to kind of see how your local practice is set up on that one.
Thanks. So Deborah asked, is the payment going to be in form of a check or direct deposit?
That is also a good question, Deborah. If you will email me, I believe it can be either. But I think most of our large providers are set up on direct deposit, but I'm not sure on that one. So I will have to let you know.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. These are wonderful questions. So I'm going to cut and paste these also, Kay, so that maybe
perfect. That would be great.
We can come up with an FAQ section. So Carissa asked, currently there are examiner fees that are acceptable for male or female. What about our other or transgender patients? Which examiner fees will be appropriate for these patients?
That is a good question.
Yeah,
so
the female has a different charge than the male.
I think that one probably needs an email too, because I'm not really sure what you are currently doing with those exams, like what procedures you're currently doing. So we would just kind of need to walk through that to figure out what you would put on there.
Yeah, let's talk more about that, because I think it was the nature of the external body parts versus internal, and the process
Correct.
of the exam and how long it takes, that kind of stuff. Mara Beth said it can be set up on accounts receivable. I do believe it can, Mara Beth. I think that's what Kay is saying, but I would recommend an email to Kay on that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's an accounts receivable. You have to submit it to us, the application and the bill. So I don't know if you're talking from a hospital's perspective, or because we don't really have accounts receivable. I mean, we get a bill, we pay. So it's not like an automatic billing or anything like that. So that one probably needs an email.
Okay. Thanks.
And then I think Carissa's, would we get bills kicked back for the wrong examiner fee? So yes, let's talk with that one. I'm not actually over the exam reimbursement process. That is Ricky Sanchez and Roxanne Ramon. So whatever questions come in on that nature, we would set up something to kind of go over those and talk with you about it.
Wonderful. Okay, everybody, I am cutting and pasting the questions so that we can go through and kind of create an FAQ. And maybe we can have an FAQ section either on the OAG site or the A&M site, or both with links, whatever, but something so that people that come into this process later can, I'm sure we'll have similar questions, if not exactly the same, so we can kind of have some rote responses for everybody. Anything else from anybody? It seems like the questions have kind of calmed down a little bit, so I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to ask more if they want. Angela asked, is there a list available of exams not reimbursable by the OAG, such as military, federal, and prisoner? Oh, I think that's a great,
Yeah, I believe that is already in our guide, but let me double check. And if it is not, it is something we can add to our guide. So let's see here, sorry. I'm trying to find the guide here.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
May I email Lori to get help on? Lori would not be able to help you. We got a question. May I email Lori to get help setting up our account on the OAG website? No, that would need to come through the OAG. Lori is at Texas A&M. So if there is a question, just email our office and we will walk you through that.
Wonderful. Okay. How about when will the forms be ready for billing as of now? I don't understand. What can we as a SANE, where can we as a SANE find them? They are on both of our websites that I showed everyone earlier. And so when you get the PowerPoint from this presentation, it has the hyperlink to both the OAG website and to the A&M website. And so we can go right back here. If you go to Ken Paxton's OAG site under Crime Victims Forms and Publications, right here is the law requestment form, and then there's reimbursement application and guidelines. So everything is right there for you. Marabeth, documentation required for additional hours. Does that still fall? The maximum you can bill is $1,000.
Correct. $1,000 is the maximum reimbursable amount.
Becky asks, if she understands correctly, a person in police custody can get an exam, just a prisoner in prison is different. I believe that's accurate. Okay.
Is that how it is currently being done in the field, that you have a individual in police custody that is been brought from jail for an exam? Or we typically do not cover custodial individuals, like if they are in custody at some point, but I need to double check on that one. So we will get a clarification on that one.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They're on their way to jail and say I was right. They come to the hospital before they go to jail. That, yeah, they're in custody. I think they can have a sexual assault exam then. I believe that's the process.
Yeah, I need to double check on these because we at one point we're not covering anything, any prisoner, and by prisoner even anybody in jail. So even if the exams were pulled by the sheriff's office, I think Carissa asked one of the same thing. The jail is investigated by the sheriff's office, so it's billed similarly to a law enforcement. We have not in the past covered those knowingly, so I need to double check on that one, because that's supposed to be covered under PREA and all the other things, but I don't know how it's done at the local level.
That's a good question. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, and so here's Kay's information again. Mine is there, and I think that is all we have. So we're going to do this again. I was going to have one on Thursday, but I had some conflict with scheduling. And so our next conference call, that's going to be exactly the same as this, is going to be 10 o'clock on Monday, September 9th. Exactly the same Zoom information. If you want to share with people that were unable to get on this one, share that Zoom information, you can. If not, they can email me and I will give them the Zoom information. Like I said, this will be transcribed and will be available on our Texas A&M website. I'm hoping at the end of next week. It does have to be ADA compliant, so please bear with us. We are going to create some kind of FAQ, something along those lines, to help me understand it's a new process and it's just going to take some time and there's going to be growing pains.
Yes, and again, those questions are some topics that we might not have ever even had because law enforcement was covering things that we didn't know about. So,
thank you.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions, please let us know. I know this week's going to be kind of interesting with a bunch of new laws going into effect over the weekend. So if there's any questions, any billing, if I can't answer it, then we will make sure we get with Roxanne and Ricky as well to make sure we're giving you the best information. And we have been collecting all, as she said, FAQs. So whatever FAQs or questions we get at our office, we're compiling as well so that we can keep updating the guide to reflect those.
Wonderful. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.